Hello, friends, and let's get started.
A young couple, Josh and Emily, recently moved into a new apartment in a modern apartment complex. Their previous apartment had no concierge, no spacious hallways, and no gated parking lot. Here, everything looked different. Long hallways with white walls, soft carpeting, large windows. When they had just drawn up the paperwork and brought the first boxes, it seemed to them that life was going to take on new colors. And indeed, the changes began immediately. They were joined downstairs by a couple who at first glance seemed to be the complete opposite of their usual surroundings, Rachel and Dylan Steele. Cheerful, talkative, as if they did not recognize any conventions. When they met, they immediately showed themselves as open-minded and easygoing people. Josh and Emily met them at the elevator, both carrying heavy bags from the supermarket. Rachel laughed out loud when she saw Emily trying to hold the door open so she wouldn't pinch the corner of a vegetable box. Dylan gallantly picked up the box and placed it neatly against the elevator wall. "Are you 115? Rachel asked, fixing her brown hair. "I think our concierge said there was a young couple moving in." "Yes, we are," Emily smiled. "I'm Emily, and this is Josh. We're still figuring out where everything is. We'll probably bore you with questions." "Great. And we're Dylan and Rachel." Dylan nodded. "We never get bored with questions. If you want to come over tonight, we have a good supply of wine and a view from the balcony. We could celebrate the move." Josh nodded. He felt a little tense in the new place, as if he had to learn everything from scratch. But Emily lit up at the thought that it would be nice to celebrate. After all, moving was always stressful, and a short get-together with the neighbors could be the first step to feeling at home. In the evening, they did go down a floor below, catching Dylan and Rachel in a homely but quite cozy setting. Scented candles burned in the hallway, and the shelves were filled with art objects that seemed to come from all over the world. Elephant figurines, painted masks. The wine was light, the conversation lively. Rachel talked about how she loved sports, how she worked in a small design studio where everything was unconventional and free, and her husband traded stocks on the stock exchange, mostly in the mornings so that he had time to live during the day. At the same time, Rachel herself glanced at Emily, as if assessing her looks and, perhaps, her potential for joint activities. Not surprisingly, it was toward the end of the evening that the suggestion was made. "Why don't we go work out together at a local fitness club?" Rachel asked, fanning herself with a napkin. "I'm just about to form a new women's group, just so I don't get bored on my own." Emily happily agreed. She'd been wanting to get in shape for a long time and complained that it was hard for her to maintain a consistent schedule on her own. She has to go to work in the morning, cooking, cleaning, and general chores in the evening. And if you go to the gym with someone, you get motivated. Josh listened to them, sitting on the edge of the couch, and smiled slightly. He was pleased that Emily had made friendships so quickly. But he also noted the way Dylan was looking at both of them, more with curiosity than anything objectionable. He didn't talk much about himself, but he seemed calm, slightly ironic. There was a casual confidence about him. He held his gaze with too much confidence, and he was easy to touch when, for example, he went to pour wine and touched Emily's shoulder accidentally. Maybe it was his manner, or maybe Josh had picked up on something hidden. Still, the acquaintance was pleasant. When they got back to their room, Emily said, "It's great to have such fun neighbors. I used to be afraid that new people would be closed off and we'd live without knowing each other." Josh shrugged. He was pleased to see Emily in such a mood. The move had actually gone more smoothly thanks to this unexpected friendship. The very next day, Emily called Rachel and they arranged their first workout together at the fitness center that was located behind the next building in the complex. Emily rebought her gym uniform, tight tights and a top, and chose sneakers with cushioning. Josh tapped jokingly on her sneakers. "Maybe I should start working out too?" Emily snorted. "You better take care of your projects, and I'll be in shape by summer." She worked as an accountant, but she could do some of her work in the office and some of it at home, although now she was trying hard to keep up with everything so she could go to the gym in the evenings. Soon she started coming back later and later. At first it was not noticeable at all. Well, she came 20 minutes later than she had promised. Then 40. Then an hour. She gave reasonable explanations. "We want to get a protein bar after practice. We decided to go to the sauna at the gym. The class was stretched out because there were a lot of people. It all sounded plausible. Josh was glad his wife was taking care of herself, that she had enthusiasm. He worked remotely, so he could cook dinner and greet her with a smile. But one little thing was starting to bother her. Rachel had somehow mentioned in passing that she'd missed class, and Emily claimed otherwise. Did they just not connect? Or was Emily also going with someone else? One day, Emily showed up in the tights she'd worn the day before and with wet hair, even though the time was closer to 9 in the evening. Josh asked where Rachel was. Emily shrugged, grabbing a towel. Rachel was away on business, so I went by myself. What's the matter? Just a regular workout. After dinner, they went to different corners of the room. Emily sat down at her laptop to finish a report for the office, and Josh felt a vague uneasiness. He didn't want to be the kind of man who started making conspiracy theories while at home. But something wasn't right. To distract himself, Josh began to concentrate on his work tasks. He had the whole day at his disposal. He got up early, checked his mail, called his customers. But at times like this, it's hard to ignore the little things in your own home. When you work from home, you can see and hear everything. Who comes and who goes, how the usual routine changes. He began to notice that Emily began to spend more time taking care of herself. She put on the shelf expensive care products, stood in front of the mirror for a long time, choosing in which tights to go to the gym. On the one hand, it pleased. On the other, it was disturbing. Maybe she wanted to look better for herself, Josh thought. Or maybe for someone else. One Tuesday, he went downstairs to take one of the old bags to the car that he'd been planning to throw out for years, but hadn't gotten around to it. On his way back upstairs, he met Rachel in the lobby by the mailboxes. She was briskly going through some envelopes, carrying a magazine. "Hey," she said, "did Emily go to the gym today? I missed something. I was swamped at work, so without me all this." Josh tensed. The thought pounded in his ears, but Emily said they were going together, right? He, to hide the confusion, replied something like, "Oh, maybe she's with someone else." Rachel nodded. "I guess so. She's good in general. She's so enthusiastic about it," and grinned and added, "Dylan says you two must make a strong couple. You both always seem so calm. He likes that kind of harmony." Josh shivered involuntarily and walked toward the elevator. It was strange. So Emily had lied? That night he'd wanted to talk to his wife directly, but he decided not to interrogate her, but to gently clarify why she'd said she was going with Rachel and she didn't know. Emily looked confused, then smiled and put her arms around Josh's neck. "I don't remember if I said I was going with Rachel. Maybe you misunderstood. She and I don't match up sometimes. Anyway, I've gotten used to walking by myself. It's fine, really. Just take it easy." That explanation didn't seem false, but kind of slippery. Josh smiled and nodded, deciding it wasn't worth the pressure. He wasn't an alarmist, and he wasn't going to ruin the relationship with his anxiety. But over the next few days, more inconsistencies began to surface. One afternoon, Josh realized he couldn't find his favorite coffee mug. He hated it when objects disappeared. He's a neat person, always putting everything in its place. Emily said that maybe he'd left it at the neighbor's house, because Josh had stopped by recently to borrow a tool for repairs. Well, he decided to go down and ask. At the door of the apartment, which was ajar, he heard a man's voice. Apparently Dylan was on the phone. Josh rang the bell, and Dylan pulled away from the receiver, smiled, and invited him in. "Hi, come on in. I'm a little busy here, but come on in." There was a familiar, relaxed atmosphere inside the apartment, but unlike the parties, it was quiet now, and a table lamp glowed in the corner of the living room. Josh saw papers scattered on the table, charts, stock reports. Dylan gestured for him to sit down, then said into the phone, "Yeah, I'll call you back," and disconnected. "Anything wrong?" he asked, putting the phone on silent. "No," Josh answered, trying to smile. "I'm just looking for my mug. Remember when I came by the other day to pick up some tools?" "Maybe," Dylan shrugged. "Let's take a look." They went into the kitchen, which was separated from the living room by a glass partition. Josh didn't see his mug right away, but he did find several packages of protein bars and an empty shake bottle on the table. It was harmless enough, except for one thing. When Josh asked if Dylan went to the gym now, he grinned. "Of course I do. Your wife and I were at the gym today. Fire, I'll tell you. Barely got away, but you can feel the results." Josh had a chill running down his spine. Emily had said she was going alone, and she certainly hadn't mentioned that she was going with Dylan. That seemed odd, considering that she'd said that Dylan wasn't interested in fitness, and that she was only with girls. Had she lied? Or was Dylan lying? But it didn't sound like he was making it up. He talked, waving his arms around, describing how they did squats, sweated on the treadmills. Even described how Emily almost dropped a dumbbell when she hit the bench with her foot. Either he made it all up, or there's definitely something in common between them that Josh isn't being told about. The mug, by the way, they found in the locker. Dylan pulled it out and held it out with the words, "Sorry about that. We often have a drink after the gym, so I might not have seen it slip in." Josh mumbled something in response, said goodbye, and walked out, feeling his heart pounding. There was no direct evidence of cheating, but there was a sense of double dealing. In the hallway on his way to the elevator, he stopped and remembered seeing Emily and Dylan leaving the entryway a few days ago, almost together, half a minute apart. He thought it was a coincidence then, but more and more of these coincidences kept piling up. In the evening, sitting at home, he tried to force himself not to panic, but his thoughts kept returning to his conversation with Dylan. Emily returned, dropped her gym bag tiredly, and ducked into the bathroom. Soon it smelled of shampoo and shower gel. Josh walked to the door and hesitantly asked, "How was practice?" "It was okay," Emily replied. "I mostly ran on the track today. Alone, as usual." Josh clenched his fists in silence. He knew she was lying, and he didn't understand why. Maybe she could see that she was interested in Dylan and was just afraid Josh would be jealous of the downstairs neighbor. Then something was wrong. A few days later, Josh came home earlier than he'd planned. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he finished talking to the customer, excused himself for the rest of the day, bought flowers, and wanted to surprise Emily. But when he got to the driveway, he saw a strange scene. Emily was walking out the door with Dylan. Their gestures were full of unobtrusive intimacy. They weren't hugging, but they were talking in confidence, leaning toward each other. They seemed to be discussing something very personal. Josh froze, stopping abruptly behind a column so he wouldn't be seen. His heart was pounding. He didn't want to create a scene right here in broad daylight. He watched them say goodbye at the entrance, after which Dylan nodded and retreated to his car. Emily went to the elevator. 5 minutes later, Josh entered the apartment. There Emily was sitting on the couch, taking off her sneakers. Seeing her husband, she was surprised. "Oh, you're home already?" "And I'm just after the gym." "And how was the gym?" he asked quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. "It was fine. I ran on my own, then took a shower. I was going to get some rest," she said. Josh didn't say anything. He realized she wasn't going to come clean. They talked about nothing for a few minutes, but he was seething inside. When Emily went to shower, he put the bouquet of flowers in the kitchen without giving it to her. He suddenly didn't feel like presenting them at a time like this. As soon as Emily came out, Josh said, "I need to work in my office. I'll get some privacy." He closed the door behind him and began to frantically rummage through his thoughts. Maybe they're just going to the gym together. No romance. Maybe she knew it would make him angry, so she was hiding it. He wanted to talk, but he didn't dare. Then another thought popped into his head. Check Emily's laptop. Not a fair trick, but his suspicions were driving him crazy. He knew the password to her account. She'd asked for help with the settings more than once. Josh hesitated to cross that line for a long time, but finally he did. He waited until Emily was asleep and quietly turned on his laptop. He searched first for correspondence with Rachel, but found nothing of substance in the messengers. But in the personal folder, he found logs of conversations with a certain D.st. He opened them and saw correspondence full of strange stickers, innuendos, references to the fitness gym, but not only that. "If your husband is okay, we're good," the interlocutor wrote. "He doesn't understand anything," Emily replied. "I told Josh it's just fitness." After a series of similar messages, Josh's eyes came across the phrase, "You said she was okay with it." By context, she is clearly Rachel. And "I told Josh it was just fitness." So did the three of them agree on something? Or maybe Rachel and Dylan are free-spirited people, and Emily has already accepted their rules. This was horrible. Josh felt everything inside him shatter. So that was why she was different. Why so much secrecy? His hands shook as he closed his laptop. He spent the rest of the night lying on the couch without washing his eyes. Emily went out to get water a couple times, but she could see he was agitated and tried to ask if everything was okay. He shrugged it off, said it was work, nothing to worry about. But the next morning, he knew he had to do something. He couldn't just keep quiet. The first thing Josh decided to do was to probe the ground, to talk to Rachel carefully, without revealing that he had read the correspondence. The chance came quickly. The next day, he went out to take out the trash and met her at the front door. She was alone, looking tired, but still smiled when she saw her neighbor. "Hi," she said. "How are you? All settled in?" He nodded, getting up the courage to ask. "Listen, Rachel, I'm trying to figure out one thing here. Emily and Dylan go to the gym together a lot, right? Or do they not?" Rachel squinted a little. "Didn't she tell you?" Dylan said she was aware of the whole situation. "We thought you both knew." "What situation?" He tried to speak calmly, but his throat was dry. Rachel ran her hand through her hair. "Josh, just don't get mad, okay? Dylan and I have an open relationship. We don't make a secret of it, and we thought Emily was okay with it. I thought you two had talked it out and agreed. You know, there are couples who try things." "You mean the three of you? Or?" "Well," Rachel shrugged. "We didn't go into detail. All I know is that Emily expressed interest and Dylan was okay with it. Me neither. I thought you were having some sort of experiment and that you probably didn't want to go into details. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but Dylan told me that your wife agreed without any objection, and he thought you knew too. Like, there's two of you and two of us. We're all adults." I clarified, "Is Josh sure he knows?" He replied, "Yes, of course." Josh stood there, feeling the ground go from under his feet. A startling picture was being revealed to him. Emily had long ago entered into some sort of pact with them, in which they may have already had an intimate relationship. Or was she just preparing for it? And all of this behind Josh's back. He took Rachel's words as a blow. He couldn't just walk away. "But I didn't know anything. Not a word," he said quietly. Rachel hesitated too. "I'm sorry about what happened. I thought that since Emily was so sure that it was okay, you two had made a deal together. I'm sorry." With those words, she walked quickly toward the exit, not wanting to continue the conversation, and Josh remained standing there, clutching the garbage bag. His head was spinning with the realization. His wife was playing a double game. He wasn't against experimentation, but in a couple it was up to both of them. And here no one asked him. Back in the apartment, he sat in the living room, staring at the wall. He dozed for a while, and in his dream he saw himself knocking on a closed door, with Dylan and Emily laughing behind the door, and Rachel telling him, "But we thought you agreed." He woke up in a cold sweat. It was time to clear things up directly. When Emily returned from practice, Josh closed the door behind her and said sharply, "We need to talk." She saw his face, went pale. "Is something wrong? Let's have no excuses. I know you and Dylan, that he and Rachel are in an open relationship and that you got involved. And without me. Can you explain that?" Emily blushed, lowered her gaze. "What are you talking about?" She mumbled, trying to sound tough, but there was a hint of fear in her voice. "Don't lie." Josh raised his voice. "I talked to Rachel. She thinks we both know and agree to this openness. But I didn't know anything. Or did you think I didn't need to be consulted?" Emily shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I thought you wouldn't understand. I thought you'd object and make a scene. It's not cheating, really. It's just sex experimentation. I want to change. We've been in a rut lately, work, home, and I felt like I needed something to shake things up." Josh looked at her like she was a stranger. Like it was the first time he'd ever seen a man willing to justify such deception by saying he just wanted to shake things up. He sighed convulsively and gritted his teeth. "Why did you hide everything? You could have said, 'I want to try it,' and then we could have talked about what to do next. But you went behind my back. You and Dylan secretly went to the gym, secretly texted, and Rachel thought that everything was agreed." Emily slumped helplessly onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry. I was sure you'd never agree. I wanted to try it and then see if I needed it. It's my first marriage. I don't know how you feel about it. I didn't mean to ruin it, honestly. But you've already ruined everything," Josh said bitterly. "At least the trust." He felt tears coming to his throat, but he tried to hold them back. Inside he was screaming, how could she? And on the outside, he remained cold. Emily looked up at him, eyes full of despair. Let's talk calmly sometime, sit down together, discuss it. We could even talk to the three of them or a counselor. I don't want to lose you. Josh only shook his head. He couldn't have a calm conversation right now. And he physically couldn't imagine that they would be sitting at a round table with Dylan and Rachel, discussing how to divide his wife. It seemed absurd and humiliating. I need time. He cut him short and retreated to the bedroom. That night, they slept in separate rooms. The morning was overcast. Josh stayed up most of the night, and as he stared absent-mindedly out the window, he felt a firm decision. He had to finish this story. He couldn't live in a situation where his wife was going to blatant deception for her freedom. Either she chooses him and closes all these third-party arrangements, or their marriage is impossible. And in his heart, he already realized that there was no way back. You cannot just erase the betrayal from memory. Determination gave him strength. He got up, washed his face, and left the apartment, deciding not to talk to Emily, but directly to Dylan. He knew Dylan was usually home in the mornings, then on his way to run his own errands. The doorbell rang, followed a few seconds later by footsteps. Dylan himself opened the door, wearing a homemade t-shirt and gym shorts, his hair slightly damp from a shower. When he saw Josh, he smiled as if nothing had happened. "Hi, come on in." But Josh didn't let him finish his sentence. He grabbed Dylan by the collar and shoved him inside the apartment. He stumbled back, dropping something from the table, turned around, trying to say, "Hey, what the?" But he was immediately hit hard in the cheekbone. Rachel, running out of the bathroom, cried out. Josh threw another punch, feeling some of the weight lifted from his heart, as if he'd vented the rage he'd built up. Dylan jerked back, pressing his palm to his face, blood trickling from his busted lip. "Are you out of your mind?" Rachel screamed. "Stay away from me," Josh hissed, dropping the keys to his apartment right beside them on the floor. "Don't you dare drag me into your experiments. That's it, I'm done." And he walked out, slamming the door. The sound was deafening. There were no neighbors visible in the hallway, but someone had probably heard the noise. Josh didn't care. It was as if he let out the rage he had been holding back for so long. At home, Emily ran from room to room in a panic, holding the phone to her ear. "Josh, what did you do? Did you beat him up? God, what's going to happen now?" He silently walked past her to the closet, pulled out a travel bag, and began throwing things in it. Emily ran after him, trying to explain, crying, "Stop, we can fix this." No, wait." Josh didn't react in any way. 15 minutes later, he left the apartment with a bag on his shoulder, called a cab, and left. Emily dialed his number dozens of times afterward, sending him messages. He immediately blocked her because he knew he wasn't ready to talk right now. He moved in with his brother in a neighboring town, rented a small room there so as not to interfere. For 2 days, he hardly answered his phone. The third day, he decided it was time to all the I's and T's. He filed for divorce without really discussing the details. Emily, according to a mutual acquaintance, cried, sobbed, tried to find a way to go to family therapy, but at the first divorce hearing, she remained silent for almost the entire procedure. Only at the end, when the judge clarified whether the parties really agreed to dissolve the marriage, Emily quietly said, "I thought it would save us from the routine, but apparently it just ruined everything." Josh didn't say anything back. The judge signed the divorce papers. 3 months passed. Josh moved to another neighborhood, to a smaller apartment, but it was a short-term rental. He hadn't decided where he was going to live. Sometimes he went to the nearest gym in the mornings, but he did it alone. His work gradually improved, new orders appeared, and immersion in the work process helped him to distract himself. He greeted his neighbors only formally, without much conversation, and he didn't want to get close to anyone. He never saw Emily again. He knew from mutual acquaintances that she had resigned from her previous position and left for another city. They say that she was going through a hard breakup, or maybe she realized that she had made an irreparable mistake. He hadn't heard much about Dylan and Rachel either. Someone said they'd rented out their apartment and gone on vacation, maybe moved to another state. Josh didn't care about that. He didn't blame anyone and didn't justify anyone. He just accepted that life sometimes gives us such blows, after which we can only draw conclusions and move on. One day, walking near the old house, he noticed a familiar shape on the balcony, like a silhouette in the dark. But then he realized that it was other people. Maybe a new family renting the apartment where he had once lived with his wife. The past was buried. He felt a strange relief and a slight sadness at the same time. He walked on, clutching the shopping bag in his hands, smiling at his own determination. Everyone has the right to choose, after all. And if someone decides to include you in an open couple without asking you, then you're out of the way. 6 months after his divorce, he noticed that he found it easier to trust himself. Now he knew exactly what he wouldn't tolerate and what he needed to say out loud. When someone at his new job suggested that he go to a party, he didn't refuse. But in the new communication, clearly set the boundaries, did not try to please everyone, did not hide his emotions. And when in one of the conversations a random interlocutor asked, "You are so wary of fun companies. Is there a reason?" he only grinned. "There are experiences that have taught me caution." That night, when he got home, he opened his laptop and noticed a few missed messages on Messenger from an unfamiliar number. Most likely from Emily, but he didn't bother to read them. He only had the strength and desire to go forward. That was how the story with the downstairs neighbors Rachel and Dylan, their incomprehensible agreements and dubious fitness training, ended. For Josh, it was a lesson and a turning point in his life, which found its logical conclusion. He made a choice in favor of himself. What happened to the rest of the characters? Official word is that Dylan and Rachel put the apartment up for sale, perhaps finding a new family willing to live within those walls from scratch. And Emily, they say, was still floundering between her feelings and trying to find a new self. But everyone has their own path now. Josh, on the other hand, continued to live his life, waking up early and going to the gym for a quiet workout. After breakfast, work, reading books, and a simple but clear thought. Sometimes change makes us stronger, even if it comes at such a high price. Everything else was just shadows of the past. He never heard from her or them again, nor did he want to. One thing he had learned clearly: any contracts in marriage should be made only by consent of both parties. If someone takes the right to decide for the two, it is no longer love and trust, but only an illusion. After a while, he walked by the former house again, glanced at the balcony, remembered the first time he'd seen Rachel laughing there. He smiled suddenly, putting his hands in his pockets. There was someone else there now. Surely they must have their own secrets, their own joys, their own lives. And Josh moved on, feeling that the past no longer had power over him. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.